Jimmy Kimmel makes a joke about the Honorable and Venerable Marjorie Taylor Greene, and she files a report with the Capitol Police about it. What is the joke? We will listen to it live on the air. So we'll talk just a bit about what's happening with that. A man accused of misdemeanors in the Capitol riot trial is acquitted because the police waved him in, which is going to change a lot of the January 6th Commission and a lot of everything else that went along with this as well. So we'll talk just a bit about what's going on with that. Oklahoma outlaws abortion, all but, as Colorado makes a law that says, hey, up to a few days afterwards, so we'll talk just a bit about the dichotomy there. And a slew of people, including Merrick Garland and Adam Schiff, test positive for the commie fucking coup. Coincidence on an election year? I think not. It is going to be all this and more. You're just mad you can't date me. I am Jay Hector, and this is Contemporary. Remain calm and adjust your settings from DJ Cutman over on the Video Game Study Lounge. Thanks for providing the music this morning. Once again, probably one of my favorite places to get the music from, and we get a lot of really cool stuff here. I know I shared one playlist with Sully Blue the other day, and it was he enjoyed it, or he seemed to a couple songs in at least. But he's a Zelda fan, and it was a Zelda themed playlist, so. Very, very good music on this playlist. It's probably one of my favorites. It's the same one we go through every day. We listen to a lot of different music every day too. So, it's a 24-hour playlist. 24-hour plus. So, we get a lot of cool stuff out of it. But we can't talk about the playlist right now because we have got a ton of stuff to get to today. And just some stuff even still that was coming up fresh this morning. Based on the fact that Marjorie Taylor Greene decided to call out everybody else for their double standards. And really, honestly, when we talk about this, we're going to see, and I put it on the tweet too, that, the shoe in the other foot, you don't really want to do that, and you don't really want to do can you imagine if the shoe was on the other foot? But really, honestly, in this one, can you imagine if the shoe was on the other foot? If it was Crowder or Tucker that had made the same joke about a squad member. Christ, they'd be calling for him to be put in the pillory at this point. But we'll talk about that once we get up there. But let's get into it. But before we get started, hey, let's make sure you head on over and check out turnsofpagesproductions.com. Turns of Pages Productions is going to be your one-stop shop for all of your news and commentary needs. Once we get up and open and started, we will be carrying great shows such as The Daily Ignoramus, The Breakdown with Birkenhoff, The R-Rated Conservative, The Freckles and Brit Show, which is no more, but we still love Brit, so whatever project she is working on, she is going to be up here and joining us, and The Porch Boys. Go check out all of those great programs, all those great creators, and go check out the Give, Send, Go as we make my dream come true of trying to launch a news service where we are helping people get their news from the common man for the common man. That's right, that is the dream, and that is the point of all of this that we're doing right now, is because there is way too much news that you guys are getting from people who wear suits that cost more than your houses, and I think that's wrong. I think that you guys should be able to get news from people who've had to make some of the same decisions as you. And I think our friend Bobby Joe needs to get paid too. So once we get this up and launched, go and check that out. That's going to be a great time. So we're looking to get $2,000 off of this and help us out. Help us make a great news site from us to you. So check that out. turnsofpagesproductions.com. Let's look at the Dow, which spent the entire day in the toilet yesterday. The Dow falling at the close to 34,496.51, falling as low as 34,299.45. So it wasn't a massive drop. It stayed steady once it did fall, and then did try to claw its way back a little bit at some point throughout the day here. But it's that Fed rate hike that's making everybody nervous. But hey, the futures are trading up right now, so we'll see what happens with that. Looking at Bitcoin, your Bitcoin is down again throughout the day. It was at 44 yesterday. No, it was at 42 yesterday. I'm sorry. So it is up rather yesterday to 43,764.60. That is up 594.30 US dollars, or 1.38%. Boy, I'm having trouble talking already earlier this morning. So that's what we see coming off of that. And yeah, I mean, it took a fairly significant jump and then a fairly significant drop, and then just kind of jumped back up and held steady throughout the day yesterday as well. So, and then a fairly significant rise just a moment ago as well. So that's what we see coming off of that. Looking at your scrap metal, the scrap metal markets are a-booming right now. Copper, steel, and aluminum are all still on the upswing. Lots of green over here until you get to aluminum siding. It's green all over the place. So maybe even hold on to some of that scrap metal for just a little bit longer to see if you can pull a better price. Usually about the day that it falls would be the day I would say is the day to get it over there, but because that's where it would have peaked at which point. But yeah, lots and lots and lots of green over here. Your catalytic converter market's a little bit weak, with small foreign cat up, but large foreign cat, regular domestic cat, large GM cat, and small GM cat all down. Power supplies for computers are down, and PC towers themselves are down. Otherwise, it looks like everything we normally cover is in the green right now, which means industry is booming. Go and check that out. Let's see what IBD has to say for the morning. Dow futures rise after Federal Reserve fears strain market rally. Tesla, Nvidia make key moves, from Ed Carson. Dow futures tilted lower Thursday morning, while S&P futures and NASDAQ futures rose slightly. The market rally suffered serious losses Wednesday, with hawkish Federal Reserve comments sinking techs and lifting Treasury yields for a second straight session. Arista Networks, Nvidia, and Tesla were notable losers on Wednesday, but with different implications for their respective charts. Apple and Fortinet fell modestly, rebounding from some key support. Apple stock now has a more convincing handle, while Fortinet has a brand new handle. Finally, extra storage space broke out from a proper base, as property REITs are quietly doing well. ANET, Nvidia, and Tesla are on the IBD leaderboard. Fortinet is on the IBD long-term leaders. Nvidia, Tesla, Arista Networks, and EXR are on the IBD 50. HP shot up 15% after Warren Buffett's Berkshire Hathaway disclosed it had purchased $4.2 billion of the PC and printer giant at an 11% stake. Because he's Warren Buffett, why the fuck not? Do people even still use HP? I know that the laptop that we ran this program on forever was an HP, and it did okay, but I mean, is that still a thing? Do people still buy those? I would think that at this point, most people are doing custom stuff. Just because it really does come out to be a little bit less, but that's what we see coming off of that. For the minutes, at 2 p.m. Eastern Time, the central bank released the Fed minutes from the March policy meeting. Participants agreed on reducing the balance sheet starting as early as May. There was general agreement to cut the Fed's asset stockpile by $95 billion per month as bonds mature. That includes $60 billion in treasuries and $35 billion in mortgage-backed securities the Fed could phase in those caps over 3 months. Many Fed officials signaled support for a 50 basis point hike at one or more upcoming meetings. Several favored a half-point move in March, but it went up with a quarter-point Fed rate hike due to Russia's Ukraine invasion, according to the minutes. That comes a day after Lael Brainerd said that she supports a rapid balance sheet reduction to combat inflation. The comments by a previously dovish policymaker on top of expectations of multiple 50 basis point Fed rate hikes at upcoming meetings sent Treasury yields soaring and techs tumbling. Stocks kept falling on Wednesday, with bond yields rising, hitting session lows after the Fed meeting minutes release. On your futures, Dow futures were slightly below fair value. S&P 500 futures were up 0.1%, and NASDAQ futures climbed 0.3%. The 10-year Treasury yield was flat at 2.62% after falling modestly overnight. The 2-year yield is falling as curve widens out following the brief inversion. Crude oil prices rose more than 2% early on Thursday. And remember, overnight action in Dow futures and elsewhere doesn't necessarily translate into actual trading in the next regular stock market session. So a little bit of move here, but not a lot to report on, which it seems that everything is steady right now, which is why I think we're starting to see some futures come back and come up. Will it stay? We will see what happens throughout the day and through the next regular stock market session, which is beginning now. Let's grab one from MarketWatch. Stocks finished lower for the second day. NASDAQ sheds 2.2% as Fed minutes detail rapid balance sheet reduction plan. From Joy Wiltermuth and William Watts. U.S. stocks booked a second straight day of losses Wednesday as investors digested minutes of the Federal Reserve's March meeting that detailed aggressive plans to shrink its nearly $9 trillion balance sheet. The minutes also left the door open to more than 0.5 percentage point interest rate increase and put outright sales of its mortgage bond holding on the table. Stocks added to weekly declines Wednesday after the release of minutes of the latest Fed policy meeting outlined plans to reduce the central bank's record-sized balance sheet as the fastest clip on record. Fed officials want to reduce the balance sheet by $95 billion per month after a 3-month phase-in, potentially starting in May, but have yet to make final decision. They also showed some support for half-point rate hikes at upcoming meetings if inflation remains high or gets even worse. Sales of its mortgage-backed securities holding, rather than only letting bonds run off its portfolio as they mature, also remained on the table. It is tough to swallow, said Robert Pavlik, senior portfolio manager at Dakota Wealth Management, about the swift pace of the balance sheet reduction plan. Right now it seems like a bit of a knee-jerk, he said by phone, but I think it highlights the fact that investors are worried about inflation and higher interest rates, and that the impact is going to have an economy that's not growing as fast as it was a year ago. The 10-year Treasury yield climbed to 2.606% Wednesday, putting it above the 2-year 2.5% rate following a brief period of inversion. Expectations for a Fed roadmap to a smaller balance sheet were heightened by a speech on Tuesday from Lael Brainerd, the Fed governor who's been nominated to serve as the central bank's vice chair. Brainerd backed calls for an aggressive interest rate increase to bring down inflation, while signaling the Fed was likely to begin shrinking the balance sheet after its next policy meeting. So, they play with the money, they manipulate the currency, and then they accuse China of manipulating the currency to come back out to make everything look good off of this. Realistically, we have a job growth of fairly unimpressive jobs right now. There is, of course, as they say, a 5% wage increase coming up year over year, but we're sitting on inflationary measures of 8% year over year. Realistically, there's got to be something done, and I don't think it happens at the Fed. I think it happens in the private sector. But the Fed is going to come back out to try to change the currency to make everything look like it's all well and good, because otherwise we might get another populist. So that's what we see coming up with that. Let's get into the big news of the day, and we are going to start. Actually, before we even get started with the Marjorie Taylor Greene stuff, I ran across this tweet yesterday, and I thought it worked. I thought it fit. So, Politibunny, who is the Foo over on Twitter, came out with this tweet saying, "How dare you call us groomers? Shriek, the same people who have spent over a decade calling us." And I think the Foo is a little bit more conservative than I am. Mostly because I find it very hard to play team sports right now, but I think she is much more conservative than I am. But they have spent, absolutely, a decade calling us racists, white supremacists, homophobes, fascists, insurrectionists, Islamophobes, traitors, TERFs. I don't think we get quite that many of that one because usually the radfems don't go for a conservative policy. I digress. Deplorables, Nazis, Republicans with the C replaced by KKK, and maggots and domestic terrorists. And absolutely. That's absolutely a good point. For once, you have found a chink in the armor on the left where it comes out, where they're actually defending pedophilia, kitty diddlers, child pornographers, and you call them groomers. Because they're acting like groomers. And they take all kinds of offense to it, in spite of the fact that they're actually acting like that. Whereas, as Samantha points out very well, look at this big sheet of names that these same people feel comfortable calling anybody that disagrees with them. And even people who weren't Trump fans. Like, I had a big problem with his spending. And I've been very vocal about that. But anytime you dare to disagree with one of these people, I got Russian bot yesterday. Oh yeah, I bet you're just getting your news from Trump. Why do you worship Trump so much? Maybe you should go watch some more faux news. So, it's an interesting way to come back and look at this. And there were a lot of people that were coming up here and trying to tell her, well, that's because you are all those things. But that's what we see off of that. Alright, let's talk about Marjorie Taylor Greene, which is one of my least favorite things to talk about. And we're going to start from Insider today. Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene says she reported Jimmy Kimmel to the Capitol Police for threat of violence after he made a Will Smith joke about her. This is from Matthew Lowe. And I do have this tweet queued up, by the way, so we will watch the video, because I spent exorbitant amount of time this morning looking for this video, because I thought to myself, there's no way. On Wednesday, Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene of Georgia tweeted that she reported comedian Jimmy Kimmel to the Capitol Police, appearing to call one of the host's jokes about her a threat of violence. Greene did not comment further in her tweet. A spokesperson for Greene's office told Insider in a statement that it takes all threats of violence towards the Congresswoman very seriously. Last night, Kimmel called for violence to be committed against Congresswoman Greene. It will not be tolerated, the statement continued. Alright, before we do anything else, let's just listen to the clip. And we'll talk just a bit about what's going on with this. Before we do anything else, let's hear what Jimmy Kimmel had to say. I'm sorry, but it's relevant.
That are in the House, like Marjorie Taylor Greene. This woman, Klan mom, is especially upset with the 3 Republican senators who said they'll vote yes on Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson, who's nominated for the Supreme Court. She tweeted, Murkowski, Collins, and Romney are pro-pedophile. They just voted for KBJ. Wow, where is Will Smith when you really need him, huh? Besides that being...
The clapper that goes with that, of course, but, look. Was that a bad joke? Yes. Was it a call to action? Maybe. I'd be willing to hear Greene's office out about the fact of whether it's a call to action. I don't think it was, but I'd be at least willing to hear the other side. But I have problems with this on both sides. Number one, as a lot of people are pointing out, a lot of stupid fucking leftoids actually got one right off of this one. And this is the fact that Marjorie Taylor Greene has called the Capitol Police the gazpacho. No, not the Gestapo, the gazpacho. She was trying to stay at the Gestapo, but she's not an intelligent woman. She's called them terrorists, she's called them Nazis, she's called them every name in the book. So for her to run back out there now after something like this and expect them to get up off their asses and do something because she filed a report is a little bit laughable. That's what the leftoids got right. But as you're probably guessing by the tone and tenor of what I'm having to say here, they got one wrong off of this too, because they're also calling to say that, you know, the Capitol Police shouldn't be called because Jimmy Kimmel was right. And then it's stupid for anybody to call the police over a call to action against a sitting congressperson. Which I tend to agree with as well, because, I mean, these people are in the public eye, and, you know, they went into this knowing a little bit of some of this was going to come to them. I don't condone any violence towards political leaders, but do keep in mind the founders wanted them to be a little bit afraid of the people rising back up against them. It's the way that our Constitution was written. The problem that I have with this is not the fact that they're calling for this. The problem that I'm having with this is the fact that if Crowder or Tucker, and I hate to do the shoe on the other foot thing, but with these people I do have to remind them of things that they have actually said. And if Crowder or Tucker had said the same thing about a squad member, about Ilhan Omar, about the Honorable and Venerable Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, D-Twitch, about Ayanna Pressley, who's the other one? Rashida Tlaib. If one of those two men had said the same thing, they'd be calling for his ass to be pilloried. Not only would they be calling for him to be prosecuted, arrested, taken off the air, and that's either one of those two, or anybody else out there that's not completely to the left. I don't know if they would ever find it on this small program, but yeah. They'd be calling for this person to be beheaded in the fucking town square. If one of those two people had made a joke about slapping Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. But at this point, the left, and even Marjorie Taylor Greene at this point, if they didn't have double standards, they wouldn't have any standards at all. And I don't care necessarily about the fact that it happened. I really don't. This would have not gone into my radar at all for a second if it hadn't been for the fact that so many people have called for people to be taken out the air, imprisoned for life, for saying the same sorts of things about left-wing politicians. They get the Secret Service called on them. They have the Capitol Police pulled up on Twitter. Like, oh, you said this about this politician? And usually it's even more innocuous than that. And I was like, oh, hey, hello, at Capitol Police, at Secret Service. So that's what we see off of that. Hell, saying nasty stuff about a politician, that's part of the American dream. But, hey, that's what we see off of that. But we're not done with Greene. Because she's basically pulled up, and Kimmel decided to make a target out of her because she made herself very, very visible yesterday. So let's grab this one first. This one comes out of the house here while Jamie Raskin was speaking. Greene decided to come back up and heckle, so we'll hear some of what she had to say and what Raskin had to say back, which I have not listened to this in its entirety, and it's only 30 seconds, but please, God, don't make me defend Jamie Raskin. Please. Don't make me defend Jamie Raskin, because he's an asshole.
The general lady, I think, said something about the Russian hoax or Russian collusion. I accept the heckling, Mr. Speaker. That's all right. Because if she wants to continue to stand with Vladimir Putin and his brutal, bloody invasion against the people of Ukraine, she is free to do so. And we understand there is a strong Trump-Putin axis in the gentlelady's party. If she wants to continue to stand...
Okay, good. I don't have to defend him.
...and with Vladimir Putin and Donald Trump, that is her prerogative. But please do it on your own time, forthwith.
Hey, jack off. Donald Trump is a private citizen right now, so that is slander. Unless you have some definitive proof that that is up there, that is slander. And I hope that he sues the shit out of you for it. If he was the president, and Green can't do that because she's also a public figure, and if Trump was the president at the time, you know, that's another thing. But that is public slander on the congressional floor against a private citizen. So there was that, and then there was also this, which for the most part was I think part of the crux of where this came from, and of course it came from Ron Filipkowski, who is also a horse's ass, but let's listen to this. I can't believe she's retweeting him here.
Point though, where the Democrats are the party of pedophiles. The Democrats are the party of princess predators from Disney. The Democrats are the party of teachers, elementary school teachers trying to transition their elementary school age children and convince them they're a different gender. This is the party of their identity, and their identity is the most disgusting, evil, horrible things happening in our country. And that's why we have to say it. We have to be willing to say it, and no matter how many little blue check marks get their feelings hurt on Twitter. So, you know, it's worth talking. Point though, where the Democrats are the party of pedophiles. The Democrats are the party of...
Now, I'm not a person to come back out here and tell you that you should never, ever go back and disparage the other side. And I'm going to speak as a conservative now, not as a person who can't really play team sports. Because in spite of the fact that I think that the Republican Party in this country is stupid as fuck because they put people up like that, in spite of that, I do identify more conservative in my own home life. I don't want to impose my views on other people, but in my own home life, I try to keep a home that is more conservative. So speaking conservative for a moment, I know that I come back out and I point out the fact that it goes both ways, right and left. Well, hey, we're not Democrats. Hey, we're not Republicans. That's why you should vote for us, because look at how bad those other people are. I, at least when I do this news program and talk about policy, try to promote a policy that would be better than what the person is putting up. I don't just say, these Democrats are evil, these Republicans are evil, their policy sucks. I say, hey, this is what we should do instead. And I'd like to see more of that come out of politicians. I realize that Green doesn't have the mental capacity to do that. But so that's our Marjorie Taylor Greene stuff. Again, as far as the Jimmy Kimmel stuff goes, no, there's no reason for that. There's no reason for any of that. Funny man in TV box in failing medium said bad joke on TV. You just let his ratings fucking fall for the bad joke that he told. But that's what we see coming out of that. On the other side of things, going back into the January 6th stuff, throw some music back up over here. Oops. Hit the wrong button. Judge acquits man of misdemeanors in Capitol riot trial, from Michael Kunzelman. A federal judge on Wednesday acquitted a New Mexico man of misdemeanor charges that he illegally entered the U.S. Capitol and engaged in disorderly conduct after he walked into the building during last year's Selfie Fest. U.S. District Judge Trevor McFadden issued the verdict from the bench after hearing testimony without jury in the case against Matthew Martin. McFadden, who was nominated by former President Trump, acquitted Martin of all 4 counts for which he was charged. McFadden said that it was reasonable for Martin to believe that he outnumbered police officers, allowed him and others to enter the Capitol building through the rotunda doors on January 6, 2021. The judge also said Martin's actions were about as minimal and non-serious as anyone who was at the Capitol on January 6th. Martin is the third Capitol riot defender whose case has been resolved by trial. He's the first of the three to be acquitted of all charges that he faced. The first two Capitol riot trials ended with convictions, although McFadden acquitted one of those defendants of a disorderly conduct charge after the bench trial last month. In the same courthouse where Martin was acquitted, a fourth trial continued on Wednesday for a former Virginia police officer who is charged with storming the Capitol with another off-duty officer. Jurors heard testimony from the fellow officer who pleaded guilty to riot-related charges and agreed to be a witness for prosecutors. Yeah, this guy turned around and... Martin, whose bench trial started Tuesday, testified that a police officer waved him into the building after the riot erupted, but a prosecutor dismissed that testimony as nonsense. The judge, however, said video shows two police officers standing near the rotunda doors and allowing people to enter as Martin approached the doors. One of the officers appeared to lean back before Martin placed a hand on the officer's shoulder as a possible sign of gratitude, the judge said. McFadden described Martin's testimony as largely credible. The judge said it was not unreasonable for him to believe that officers allowed him to enter the Capitol, even though alarms were blaring, broken glass was strewn about the floor. Martin was charged with 4 misdemeanor counts: entering and remaining in a restricted building, disorderly disruptive conduct in a restricted building. The People's House is a restricted building. Think about that for just a second. Violent entry and disorderly conduct in a Capitol building, and parading, demonstrating, or picketing in a Capitol building. Those are 4 things that should be a part of the American dream, especially given the fact that that building is taxpayer funded. Those should not be charges. Violent entry, maybe. But again, the violent entry part of that, if the police officer is standing there, okay, welcome to the Capitol. Hey, enjoy your stay. Walk around, enjoy the sights. It's kind of hard to come back out here and say, oh, yes, that was a violent entry. The judge said Martin appeared to be a silent observer of the actions of others. McFadden didn't find evidence that Martin intended to disrupt Congress from certifying Joe Biden's 2020 electoral victory. Dozens of Capitol Selfie Fest defendants have pleaded guilty and been sentenced, but Martin is the first to testify at trial. His acquittal could embolden others to gamble on a bench trial, although McFadden is so far the only judge to preside over one and decide a case. We're going to talk about what Dershowitz has to say about this as well, because this acquittal changes a lot of things for a lot of trials. It changes a lot of things for a lot of appeals, even for people who pled guilty, who decide they want to come back out and appeal this. They have a case. The fact that they pled guilty means they have less of a case, but they have at least a case, a chance, an opportunity to come back and do something. From a lawyer who probably looked in and said, just take the guilty plea, you'll get out in 5 years, and, I won't have to work very hard at all. And this is one of the things that we've been saying. A lot of us who have been picking this apart, watching the video, looking at everything, have been saying from the beginning. There were a few people at the front of the line who busted windows, and I think some of them were feds. Ray Epps on the top of it. Even Vincent James. I don't trust Vincent James either. I've never watched his programming, but I know the kind of people that come back and follow him out, and I think that he is planted out there to come back and do something like that. Red elephants, of course. But for the most part, for the vast majority of people who walked into the Capitol, my best friend, Stephen Ignoramus, and I trust his word off of this, says that they just held the door open for him and let him in. While he was in there. And then they tried to tell him that he was violently in there, violently trying to interrupt a government protocol with a cell phone in both hands. I don't know how the violence works when you're doing this the whole time, but it is what it is. There are people who are going to be convicted of very serious offenses off of this Capitol Selfie Fest. But the vast, vast majority of people who are there will not be. Plain and simple, unless they do the stupid thing, like the first few people in the trials have, and plead guilty to it, because the lawyer told them it was a good idea. Because they believe for a second that they can't get a fair trial, which I'm pretty sure that some of these lawyers believe that right now. I wouldn't believe you could get a fair trial out of this. If I was there, I would have come back out to my lawyer and said, well, I'm probably fucked because we'll get a trial, but it won't be a fair one. And I have to wonder, too, how painful it was for the Washington Post author, Michael Kunzelman, to have to write this. Well, I guess Kunzelman's for the Associated Press. However, they're not much better. How painful it was to get this posted in the Washington Post of the people that we've called violent insurrectionists, that we said for sure we're all going to prison. One of them got acquitted. What do we do? So that's what we see coming up with that. From the Daily Wire. If that's the rule, we will win. January 6th acquittal, a normalcy important, Dershowitz says. This is from Gabe Kaminsky. Ellen Dershowitz, who is representing January 6th defendant facing roughly 20 years in prison, told the Daily Wire in an interview Wednesday that the acquittal of Capitol riot defendant Matthew Martin is enormously important, sets a legal precedent that could swing momentum in favor of his legal team. A federal judge acquitted Martin, a former government contractor at a nuclear weapons laboratory in Los Alamos, New Mexico, on all charges Wednesday. Martin argued that police let him enter the Capitol and that he was waved into the building, the Daily Wire reported. Brady Knowlton, who Dershowitz is representing, spent 18 minutes in the Capitol January 6th after he and others passed several police officers walking in their opposite direction. The Daily Wire reported Knowlton told the Daily Wire that an officer said, "You can go in as long as you don't break anything," before watching police and protesters shaking hands. Dershowitz said that the subjective intent of the defendant is key, noting that the judge took Martin's word over that of the police in the persecution. The courts have to look at the state of mind of the defendant, he said. If that's the rule, we will win, he said, because it's clear that Brady honestly and reasonably believed that he was not violating any rules or laws, that he was being welcomed as long as he didn't do any damage. There are now January 6 defendants who have resolved their cases in a trial, but Martin is the first to be acquitted of all charges. The defendant was charged with entering and remaining in a restricted building, disorderly and disruptive conduct in a restricted building, violent entry and disorderly conduct in a Capitol building, and parading and demonstrating or picketing in a Capitol building. Knowlton has been charged with similar misdemeanors to Martin. He faces about 20 years in prison as the DOJ uses Statute 1512 in the U.S. Code to prosecute him for obstruction of a congressional proceeding. Knowlton's attorneys, who include Harvard Law School professor Ronald Sullivan, says his law degree has been withheld by the University of Denver. Around the same time, Airbnb banned him and his wife, and U.S. Customs and Border Protection removed his global entry access, according to emails obtained by the Daily Wire. Yeah, the Airbnb thing, I think that's going to be pretty standard, which I know that happened to Steven too. He got popped for Airbnb, which I know is a shame. I hate to listen to him because I know he loved Airbnb. He loved using the service. When we went to Florida, that's what we used. On his suggestion was Airbnb. But that's what we have off of that, and hopefully we get some people that start to go acquitted off of this. Get the ones who were actually being violent, the ones who broke windows, who actually vandalized, pop them for what it is, because, you know, all the money that's coming to repair this stuff is coming out of the taxpayer pocket. But the ones who just came in and walked around and got waved in, no, there's no reason for them to be going to trial for this. Pay a fine or get an acquittal and move on with your day. From NBC. Oklahoma legislature passes bill to make performing abortions a felony. Governor Kevin Stitt, a Republican, said he would sign any anti-abortion rights bill that comes to him. From Natalie Rice, Maura Barrett, and Abigail Brooks. The State House passed a bill Tuesday that would make performing an abortion a felony, punishable by up to 10 years in prison. Governor Kevin Stitt, a Republican, has said he will sign any anti-abortion rights bill sent to him. If he signs this one, it will go into effect this summer. Another House Bill, 4327, would allow private citizens to file lawsuits against doctors who perform abortions and would only allow a woman to have an abortion if her life were at stake. It now goes to the state Senate. It's terrifying to think that we're going backwards in time and that we're actually watching in real time getting our rights taken away from us, said Kristen Williams, a participant in an abortion rights rally Tuesday in Oklahoma City, the capital. The state has already imposed restrictions intended to deter women from having abortions, including barring them from using health insurance to pay for the procedure except for life-saving purposes, requiring an ultrasound and state-mandated counseling that seeks to discourage abortions, and imposing a 72-hour waiting period before the procedure. Abortion providers say they feel like they're living in a post-Roe environment, referring to the Supreme Court's landmark Roe v. Wade decision in 1973 that legalized abortion nationwide. We're adjusting to major legislative changes, especially in Texas, and what that looks like when a basic medical procedure is no longer available to the people in one of our largest states and medical systems in the country, said Dr. Christina Bourne, medical director at the Trust Women Clinic in Oklahoma City. Really? Oklahoma is one of the biggest states in the country? When it's right next to Texas? Who's currently being invaded by Californians? Well, across the way from Florida, that's currently being invaded by New Yorkers? Really? That's one of the biggest states? Are you sure? I mean, I've never been there, so I have no idea, but... Texas, which has the nation's most restrictive abortion law, bans the procedure after doctors can detect a fetal heartbeat about 6 weeks into a pregnancy, with no exceptions for rape, sexual abuse, incest, or fetal anomalies. It took effect in September. Republican lawmakers in other states, including Tennessee, Idaho, and Missouri, have rushed to introduce copycat bills. The proposal in Arkansas goes beyond Texas' 6-week limit, banning abortions at any stage of pregnancy except when the mother's life is at risk. According to the Guttmacher Institute, an organization focused on reproductive health rights, 71 proposed bills have been introduced in 28 states this year to outlaw or ban abortions. The U.S. Supreme Court is expected to issue a ruling this summer on a Mississippi law that bans abortion after 15 weeks of pregnancy, a ruling that could severely erode or even overturn Roe v. Wade. So there is a lot of stuff that's going on with this. Now, as far as I stand on this, I would like to change our society so we don't need to have abortion anymore. I would like to work from the inside, make our society so prosperous, so booming, that people feel the need to pass along the next generation and can afford to do so almost immediately. I don't want the government to do it because the government fucking sucks at everything. I hate the idea of abortion. I hate the idea that somebody can run back out there and do that so quickly and so easily. But again, you guys know my relationship with the government, both federal and state, and how much they suck at everything. So I would much rather find a way to change society, to make these people, the women who would go and have an abortion, feel welcome. Feel welcome to have their baby. Feel welcome in knowing that their offspring can come into a good, loving home on the adoption system. We're not there yet, unfortunately. Or, conversely, to change the lifestyle so that you don't have accidents happen. That government, it fucking blows. It really does. But that's what we have to say off that. But, you know, we come back out here and we see some of the rest of this stuff coming back out here. Barbara Lee It's your body, your decision, not a bunch of white men in Oklahoma's. We can't rely on the... And it's got to be white men, too, of course. We can't rely on the Supreme Court. Congress must codify abortion access into federal law before millions lose this right. Actually, there again, I don't like the idea that the federal government could make this into a federal law. I don't like that, but a lot of these representatives and senators have to go back and put their money where their mouth is. If they are so important to this, they can't sit back and rely on the Supreme Court to do it anymore. If this is so important to them, make the law, pass the law, and see if you can still go home to your constituents. A lot of them, even in Democrat states, can't. Tom, W-A-S-S-H-O-L-E, I don't know what a wasshole is, but apparently that's what Tom is, says, no, it's not. It's your child's body. The choice was made when you chose to have sex. And this went down, and I had my proposal to this. Molly says, what if you didn't choose to have sex and your consent was stripped from you? Tom says, enough with the whataboutisms and hyperbole. You know damn well that's less than 1% of the cases. Molly replies, so if it's just 1%, does that mean they don't matter? It just seems like you want to take away options for people who weren't given the option of consent in the first place. To which I propose, this is the proposal that I had to this. Okay, then we make a compromise. The 1%, which would be less than 1% of the cases that you brought up, remain exempt. Rape, incest, sexual abuse, okay, we'll accept those. Every other abortion is a top-level felony in your state, punishable by the applicable laws of the top-level felony. No, I didn't say applicable laws. All other abortions are punishable by life imprisonment for both the seeker and the provider if they're done for convenience. Okay, let's leave out the rape, the incest side of everything else. That is all. Those are all fine. Okay, if you have to get an abortion for that, we'll make that compromise. But everything else, life imprisonment, no questions, no parole, no appeal. And oddly enough, I never got a response back out of that. It's almost like this person is trying to use the 1% to protect the other 99% that are done for convenience. And again, I don't advocate for the government doing any of this because they suck. We need to change this culture. Change the way that people look at sex and protection. I'm the last person to sit back out here and tell you to be chaste, because I wasn't for so long. I'm the last person in the universe to say chastity is the key. I think it's a good idea, but I understand where the temptation comes from. But yet, I have no kids, so keep that in mind. There are other ways to do this other than getting an abortion every time you decide to go out and have a night of fun. But that's where we go with that. That's what we see coming back up out of that. Let's grab one from our friends over at NPR on the other side of this spectrum. NPR, the right to abortion in Colorado is now guaranteed under state law. From Joe Hernandez. And remember, once you get done with the abortion, whatever money you have left over, make sure you get out and donate out to NPR, because Planned Parenthood needs your money, and so does NPR. They need the money to tell you that your only option is to remain poor and go get another abortion. They need to be able to tell you that through a quiet microphone, so make sure that you get them your money, donate there. Never Printing Reality, National Progressive Radio. Let's see what they have to say. Colorado has just enacted a law that enshrines the right to have an abortion in the state. The latest left-leaning state that's taken action to protect the reproductive rights as the practice faces renewed efforts by conservatives to restrict its access. The so-called Reproductive Health Equity Act affirms that pregnant people in Colorado have the right to continue a pregnancy and give birth or have an abortion, and it blocks public entities from denying or restricting that right. In the state of Colorado, that serious decision to start or end a pregnancy with medical assistance will remain between a person, their doctor, and their faith, Governor Jared Polis said in a statement after signing the bill into law on Monday. The bill simply maintains the status quo regardless of what happens at the federal level and preserves all existing constitutional rights and obligations, he added. Colorado joins 15 other states and Washington, D.C. in codifying the right to have an abortion either prior to a fetus viability or throughout the pregnancy in state law. Blue states have been racing to enact such laws, and the U.S. Supreme Court considers a case that could upend the constitutional right to an abortion outlined in the Roe v. Wade decision. The current court is more conservative than past courts that have taken up similar challenges. So that's what they're saying. It is from NPR. I mean, this is not a long article, but there have been other sides of this to talk about, to see, and pro-life groups are getting in on this one as well. From The Blaze, pro-life groups say Colorado's new abortion law may legalize infanticide. From Chris Pandolfo, Colorado has become the 15th state in the union to enshrine the right to have an abortion into state law with a bill that pro-life activists say may legalize infanticide. Governor Jared Polis signed the so-called Reproductive Health Equity Law Act into law Monday, a law that affirms women in Colorado have the right to kill their unborn babies during pregnancy and blocks public entities from acting to deny or restrict that right. In the state of Colorado, the serious decision to start or end a pregnancy, we heard about Polis had to say about that. The bill simply maintains the status quo regardless of what happens at the federal level, preserves all existing constitutional rights and obligations, he added. The law explicitly denies the unborn children rights in the state of Colorado. A fertilized egg, embryo, or fetus does not have independent or derivative rights under the laws of the state, the law says. That's fucking icy. Holy shit. Pro-life activists have decried the law as radically extreme, warning that it will lead to abortion tourism, discrimination against unwanted babies of the wrong gender or race, and the death of babies that would otherwise be able to live outside the womb. Against the will of Coloradans across the state who contacted their elected officials, Polis said, and the radical abortion extremists in our state legislature have ignored us yet again, said Colorado for Life in a statement posted to its Facebook page shortly after Polis signed the law. Others have warned that the wording of the law could make killing children born alive during an abortion legal in Colorado. Under the rules proposed by this bill, if a child is delivered alive during an abortion, and doctors are under no legal compulsion to provide standard medical care, as they would in any other circumstance or attempt to preserve a child's life, said Live Action Director of Government Affairs Noah Brandt in a statement. Medical providers would listen to the mother's instructions, which could include not providing life-sustaining medical care to the child, which would lead to the child's death, which most reasonable people would not consider infanticide, he added. The editorial board of the Gazette, a Colorado Springs newspaper, blasted the law as barbaric and accused the Democrat-controlled legislature of overreaching in their zeal to defend abortion rights from a purportedly conservative Supreme Court. Using abortion as a ruse, the bill proposes lawful infanticide without stating it. It forbids any jurisdiction from infringing on an individual's right to act regarding the pregnancy's outcome. A pregnancy's outcome often includes the birth of a person, they wrote in a March 8th editorial. So, a lot of stuff moving, a lot of stuff around here. And, I mean, yes, there's going to be abortion tourism if they keep doing stuff like this. We're already seeing some of that come out of Texas, and we're already seeing, what was it? One of the big banks, I can't think of which one, I think it was JP, that said that, hey, we will provide the resources if one of our employees needs to go out of state to go get an abortion. And again, the most important part of this is why we're getting to a point where people are so up in arms over this. I mean, we had a point of safe, legal, and rare at one point. And I don't know where it went to. I really don't. But that's what we see off of that. And again, as far as the government goes, I really wish that it wouldn't have gone down that road, where the government was involved. Got some more stuff for you here. So, Democrat Arizona gubernatorial candidate dodges questions about limits on abortion. from Mary Margaret Olohan. Arizona gubernatorial candidate Katie Hobbs would not name one limit she supports on abortion, even when given multiple opportunities. The frontrunner discussed abortion with local CBS reporter Sunday night, who questioned Hobbs on what her limits on abortion would be, pointing to the state's new law that bans most abortions after 15 weeks. What would your limits be on this? The reporter asked. Limits nearly all abortions after 15 weeks. Where do we draw the line? Well, women deserve access to abortion care, said Hobbs, without addressing the question. Abortion is health care. I've been very clear on my position on that throughout my time in the legislature. Let's listen.
This limits, nearly all abortions after 15 weeks.
Oops. Fire the producer. He fucked up.
And what would your limits be on this? This limits, nearly all abortions after 15 weeks. Where do you draw the line?
Well, women deserve access to abortion care. Abortion is health care. I've been very clear on my position on that throughout my time in the legislature. So if I'm elected governor, that's what folks are getting. And I will work with the legislature that's in place to ensure that women have continued access to reproductive health care.
But where do you draw the line, though? I mean, is it, if it's not 15 weeks, is it 24 weeks? Where do you draw the line where you say, okay, abortions after this point in time, no, it's a no-go?
Abortion is a personal decision between a woman and her family and her doctor, and that's something that needs to be discussed in the medical exam room, not by politicians.
Okay, and let's move on now to the
So, it's interesting to see a mainstream media personality push back in that way. Like, because they don't. They usually just come back out and say, oh, no, that's fine. Just, hey, let's not talk about this anymore. Okay, well, you said this about abortion, but, that's fine. We don't need to talk about this anymore. To actually have this pushback, I don't think that Arizona is as purple as people try to say that it is. I really don't. They try to tell you that it's so purple, it's this and that, and, we're going to turn it blue, and we can primary Kyrsten Sinema from the left, and I look at something like this, which, again, a member of CBS questioning a gubernatorial candidate and actually showing signs of frustration when she avoids the question, tells me that, no, it might still just be a little bit red over there. From the Hill. More Supreme Court stuff. Once I get everything fixed up from, again, fire the producer, the Supreme Court halts ruling against the Trump Clean Water Act, rollback in a 5-4 decision. From Rachel Friesen. The Supreme Court on Wednesday halted a prior court ruling that struck down a Trump-era rule limiting state and tribal authority to veto projects that could impact their waters, including pipelines. The Trump rule in question, which was nixed by a federal court in October, limited states' authority to block projects by giving them a strict 1-year time limit to do so. If it did not meet this time limit, the government could determine that it had waived its veto power. The rule also limited the scope to only those that will impact water quality. It excluded other considerations such as air quality or energy policy. The High Court on Wednesday halted the vacatur, reinstating the rule for the time being in a 5-4 decision. Chief Justice Roberts joined the court's 3 liberal justices in dissenting. A dissent penned by Elena Kagan argued that the states and industry groups who had asked the court for the pause didn't prove that not doing so would cause irreparable harm and therefore did not qualify for a stay. The applicants here have not met our standard because they have failed to substantiate their assertions of irreparable harm. The court therefore has no warrant to grant emergency relief, she wrote. The Trump rule, known as the certification rule, came about after high-profile rejections of fossil fuel projects in left-leaning states, namely New York's denial of a natural gas pipeline and Washington State's denial of a coal shipping port. The Biden admin, meanwhile, announced last year that it would revise the rule. So the way that I understand this, and I actually had to look into this because I didn't know what was going on with this when I first saw this come across my attention. But once I looked into this, from the way that I understand it, was under the Trump rule, if they wanted to put a construction or an infrastructure project in, for whatever reason, the government, the locality, the state, etc., had 1 year to veto and object, which would prevent people going out and trying to use this as some sort of a ballot initiative or ballot issue. They don't want people to go back out and politician shop or judge shop throughout over a year, 2, 3, 5 years, to try to keep something indefinitely blocked until they can get these certain lawmakers or the certain judges into place that can go out and block this, which I think is a good idea, especially on the industry side. Free up the ability for industry to go in, free up the ability for the energy companies to go back out and, for lack of a better word, drill baby drill. I think that's a good idea. When the people decide that they want to do these projects and greenlight the financing, funding, and land for these companies to come back in and do this, they expect results forward. And honestly, within a year, the fucking project should be done already. In the time frame that's put out there for people to have the chance to veto, the project should be done. Not these multi-year highway projects or other kind of projects that they have sitting out here. No, that project should be done already by that point. But hey, far be it from me to look into government corruption and government greed, but that's what we see coming off of that. So I think this was the right decision. And again, a lot of this it's not about environmental protection as much as it's about judge and politician shopping to get people in there who will be the activists, who will come back and shut down the evil corporations, the billion-dollar corporations, is the way that I understand it. And if I'm wrong, I'm sure that you guys will tell me in the chat. From the Daily Wire. Texas to start busing illegal immigrants to Washington, D.C. as Biden scraps Trump-era border policy. From Tim Pierce. Now, before we go into this, I'm going to say this is probably going to get overturned pretty fucking quick. Because when the illegal immigrants come in and are arrested by DHS or Border Patrol, CBP, INS, ICE, when they're taken into custody from them, they are taken into the custody of the federal government, which means the federal government decides where they go. Which means this might be a violation on Abbott's part. Is it a good idea? Probably. Is it probably a violation on Abbott's part? Also, unfortunately, probably. Well, let's read. From Tim Pierce. Texas will bus illegal immigrants caught entering the state to Washington, D.C., Governor Abbott announced on Wednesday. During a press conference, Abbott announced that several new actions his admin is taking to expand Operation Lone Star, a state government effort to curb illegal immigration into the state from Mexico. Abbott announced that new actions as the Biden admin plans to lift Title 42, a Trump-era border policy that has allowed the U.S., on the basis of the pinko fucking pox, to stop migrants from entering the country. The Biden admin plans to officially scrap the policy in late May and is preparing for an influx of immigrants. Which, and by the way, as I said yesterday, they are scrapping Title 42 because the pinko pox is over, but they're expanding student loan payment pauses because the pinko pox is still in full swing. With the Biden admin ending Title 42 expulsions in May, Texas will be taking its own unprecedented actions this month to do what no state in America has ever done in the history of this country and better secure our state as well as our nation, Abbott said. One of the additional actions being taken, Abbott said, will be charter buses hired by the state to transport illegal immigrants to Washington, D.C. To help local officials whose communities are being overwhelmed with hordes of illegal immigrants who are being dropped off by the Biden admin, Texas is providing charter buses to send these illegal immigrants who have been dropped off by the Biden admin to Washington, D.C. Abbott announced, We are sending them to the U.S. Capitol, where the Biden admin will need to be able to more immediately address the needs of the people that they are allowing to come across the border. Abbott also announced enhanced public safety inspection of vehicles crossing Mexico into Texas at ports of entry. The new policy will dramatically slow traffic from Mexico into Texas, Abbott admitted, but the governor said that the new process is necessary to curb cartel traffic flowing from Mexico into Texas. Again, and as Ron pointed out, the ones that the Texas State Patrol apprehends, that's going to be a little bit different, and yes, they would have custody over those. I would have to read Texas law to know what the actual law is behind the idea of who is legal and who isn't in that case, and what Texas has a law for illegal immigration as far as the state law goes, as far as state level law goes. I don't know if they have one or not. Because I do believe that the majority of them are federal level laws, and federal law supersedes state law. So I don't know if they would have jurisdiction over that particular law. I would have to check with a lawyer for that. But yes, as far as what the federal, again, I don't know that they can do this with the federal people who are in federal custody. It's a nice idea. Don't get me wrong, it's a nice idea. But that may be a sticking point. From CNN. Biden signs U.S. Postal Service reform bill into law. From Sam Fossum and Megan Vasquez. I'm kind of curious as to what this is, actually. You know what? I'm so curious because of the caption off of this. I will not be lectured on bipartisanship. Lawmaker fires back at Jim Jordan. That we're going to listen to this.
I want to play to you this stunning exchange during today's House hearing on the U.S. Postal Service. Watch this.
Democrats spread false information and really blamed Republicans and the previous administration and the post office for an attempt to co-opt the 2020 elections.
It was all a charade, all under the guise of creating this crazy chaos that they wanted around the election relative to mail-in balloting.
All the gaslighting that we just heard does not change facts. It was Donald Trump, the Republican nominee, who was planting the idea, aided and abetted by disruptive changes proposed by a new Postmaster General and a compliant Board of Governors that actually eroded public confidence in the ability to vote by mail. That wasn't a Democratic narrative. That was a Republican narrative by the President of the United States and his enablers. I didn't vote to overturn an election. And I will not be lectured by people who did about partisanship. But facts are stubborn things.
Well, facts are stubborn things. And on this, Congressman Connolly is correct. Here's President Trump in August 2020.
They need that money in order to have the post office work so it can take all of these millions and millions of ballots. If they don't get those two items, that means you can't have universal mail-in voting because they're not equipped to have it.
You know, this is...
So, you know, now that we're listening to this, now that we're seeing what's going on with this, again, I didn't look into this as deeply. I just saw that he had signed the post office. I figured we'd learn it together. So we'd look into what CNN had to say off of this. But, you know, I'm looking at this, and we're going to, because of this, we're going to jump around just a little bit on the news stories as well. But let's read this from CNN. President Biden signed a sweeping bill into law Wednesday that will overhaul the U.S. Postal Service's finances and allow the agency to modernize its service. It's no exaggeration to say that the Postal Service delivers democracy. Pay attention to the fact that he said that. And it's no exaggeration to say the Postal Service is as essential as it ever was, has ever been today, Biden said at a bill signing ceremony at the White House. Biden, taking through the reforms included in the bipartisan bill, noted that it sets the Postal Service on a more sustainable and stable financial footing. The new law will require retired postal employees to roll in Medicare when eligible and repeals a previous mandate for the agency that forced it to cover healthcare costs up front and years in advance. Those two measures could save the USPS nearly $50 billion over the next decade, according to a House Oversight Committee, which that in and of itself is good. Because the majority of the problem with the post office is the fact that they let their workers retire very early, like before they're 60, very, very early, on a full pension for life, like most every other government worker. And then it keeps them on health care for life, which the fact that they have to go back and sign up for Medicare once they're able to do so, well, that's going to change a few things for some people that I know, I can tell you that, but to go back and do that, to put them on another government program, unfortunately, but still, to pull it back up out of the post office's coffers does change the game a little bit, but there are other sides to this as well. The legislation also requires the Postal Service to create an online public dashboard with local and national delivery and performance data, as well as allow the USPS to work with local governments to offer other helpful non-postal services. So they're hemorrhaging money, and they don't have enough workers to cover the mail delivery, and yet you want them to go back and do more. Today, we enshrined into law our recognition that the Postal Service is fundamental to our economy, to our democracy, to our health, and to the very sense of who we are as a nation, Biden said to an audience at the White House filled with members of Congress from both sides of the aisle. Unlike other government institutions, the U.S. Postal Service must rely on revenue it collects from deliveries, not taxpayer funding, to support itself. Bullshit. This means the agency, established in 1775, must operate without the usual financial benefits of being a federal agency while still having to bear those costs. In his remarks, the president praised the Postal Service for keeping the people and communities across the nation connected, noting its long history as one of the government's oldest agencies and its most recent efforts to deliver free Pinko Pox home test kits to millions of households. So, there's a little bit going on with this. Number one, first and foremost, they do have to go find other jobs and abilities for the Postal Service. And that's partially because nobody gets any mail anymore. I went out to the mailbox the other day, because I don't go every day. Because almost everything that I would do that would have to be done by mail gets done online. Gets done from either my phone or my computer. Every bill that I have to pay gets done online. I don't mail a check for anything anymore. Occasionally I'll get a bank statement and everything. I hadn't gone to the mailbox outside here in a month. A good, easy month it had been. And in that month, I sorted. I took out all the advertising material, all the, you've been pre-qualified for this loan or that loan because I've got a truck payment out there. How much would this $1,500 help you? I took all that out of there. I took all the political stuff out of there. I took all the ads out of there. And in a month, I had 2 pieces of legitimate mail. 2 pieces of legitimate mail in a month. Everything else was advertisements and flyers. So a lot of this does seem like they are trying desperately to make more work to keep this government agency open. But now that I'm looking at this, now that I'm seeing everything out of this, and what we know about this, we'll skip that one here. But I do want to skip around a little bit here and move on to this as well, because this is just in time. Now, of course, this is an election year. From the Hill, Schiff tests positive for the pinko fucking pox. From Monique Beals, California Rep. Adam Schiff announced on Tuesday evening that he had tested positive for a breakthrough case of the COVID-19. Schiff, who was vaccinated, announced his positive test result in a tweet. So, we had red-haired bobblehead, we had 2 White House staffers, we now have Schiff, who is, "But I'm vaccinated, I'm experiencing mild symptoms, it's a breakthrough case." What else do we have? 2 Biden cabinet members among string of positive COVID-19 cases after the elite gridiron dinner. From Paul LeBlanc and Jasmine Wright over at CNN, 2 members of President Biden's cabinet tested positive for the pinko fucking pox on Wednesday, becoming the latest high-profile Washington figures to contract the virus in recent days. They tested positive. I don't know if they contracted it or not. AG Garland and Commerce Secretary Gina Raimondo announced their positive diagnoses after having attended the Elite Gridiron Club dinner in Washington on Saturday. Other attendees, including Vice President Harris, Communication Director Jamal Simmons, and Reps Joaquin Castro and Adam Schiff, have also announced positive tests. So, we went through the entire, almost up until this point, the entire Ukrainian-Russian war without any announcement of a major public figure having it, except for red-haired bobblehead when she mysteriously didn't want to go over to Europe, and instead was getting ready to go sign a contract over at MSDNC. And then now we've got Garland and Schiff and Raimondo and Castro. As we're starting to say, hey, look, there's more and more stuff out here, and Fauci coming out and say, oh, well, it might be time for us to go back and start into the lockdowns again because it looks like we're getting another variant coming over from China. Right after, we get another overhaul bill to try to help the hemorrhaging money post office. Can you say mail-in ballot 2.0? Midterm edition, mail-in ballot 2.0. Definitely something to come back here and watch. Definitely something to come back and see here. And watch the timing of all of this. Which I'd already suspected that there was some timing issue coming in off the fact that all these people were starting to pop up with the pinko fucking pox. And then now I see that we're doing a sweeping overhaul bill to the post office. So that's what we see coming off of that. All right, let's grab one from the Daily Wire. Dick Durbin admits Republican Supreme Court nominee should have been handled better by Democrats. From John Rigolizzo. Oh, but it's too late now. Senate Majority Whip Dick Durbin conceded that Democrats should have handled the nominations of past Republican nominees to the Supreme Court better. In remarks on the floor of the Senate Wednesday, Durbin claimed that Republicans were unfair in framing Ketanji Brown Jackson's record on crime during her confirmation hearings, but admitted that the procedure for Republican nominees could have been handled better. This notion, and it pains me to even bring it before the floor, but I know it's going to come up in the next day or two, is that she's soft on crime. As I mentioned, law enforcement groups would not be endorsing her if they believed she was soft on crime. Bullshit, they wouldn't. Durbin said. And the notion that she's somehow, in the words of one Republican senator, quote, her sentencing endangers children, it's painful because he has said as much in front of her family. And I thought about how painful that must have been for her to hear those words. They're not true. And to take one or two situations, each of them unique in their factual circumstances, and generalize in terms of her position on an issue that gravity is fundamentally unfair. Durbin then admitted that Democrats had also been unfair in previous situations, but we've done it too, on the Democratic side, and I'm going to be first to admit it. As I look back on our history, there are things that should have been handled better when Republican nominees came before us. Durbin also conceded that the majority of Republican senators in the Judiciary Committee, led by Ranking Member Chuck Grassley, I believe were respectful and dealt with the judge in a fair manner, asked tough questions as they were expected to, but did not cross the line into personal attack. Durbin's comments drew no sympathy from conservatives, as a number of conservative figures responded to clips of Durbin's remarks on Twitter, pointing out some of the worst examples of Democrats being unfair to Republican nominees. Notable responses include comfortably smug, accusing a man of running a gang rape ring in front of his family because you listened to Michael Avenatti. Yeah, you could have handled that better, dick. Abigail Marone, press secretary for Josh Hawley, says it's fundamentally unfair to ask a judicial nominee about her record on the bench. Okay, sure. Matt Whitlock says Dick Durbin blocking Estrada specifically because of his race and joining Avenatti to call Kavanaugh an actual gang rapist does not compare to the fair questions. Ketanji Brown Jackson refused to answer about her actual record on decisions. I want to see if they're, because they said something about clips with some of the stuff here. So let's see what's here. Ah, yes, there it is with Durbin.
They're not true. And to take one or two situations, each of them unique in their factual circumstances, and to generalize in terms of her position on an issue of that gravity is fundamentally unfair. But we've done it too on the Democratic side, and I'm going to be first to admit, as I look back in history, there are things that should have been handled better when Republican nominees were before us. They're not true. And to take one...
And Comfortably Smug said the same thing that I said when he first started saying that Ketanji Brown Jackson was being treated unfairly. Yeah, how fair was it to accuse a man of running a gang rape gang in front of his children? So, yeah, there is that. All right, what else do we have up here? Here's one from NBC for you. Washington State plans to ban most non-electric vehicles by 2030. Why is it always 2030? Because California said 2032, and that was a few years ago. Washington State plans to ban most non-electric vehicles by 2030, according to a newly signed bill by Governor Jay Inslee. The bill says that all vehicles of the model year 2030 or later that are sold, purchased, or registered in the state must be electric. On or before December 31st, 2023, the Interagency Electric Vehicle Coordinating Council shall complete a scoping plan for achieving the 2030 target, it reads. The bill covers a lot of transportation issues in the state and is part of a larger $16.9 billion transportation package called Move Ahead Washington, in which Inslee described as a way to create more efficient transportation options. Transportation is our state's largest source of greenhouse gas emissions. There's no way to talk about climate change without talking about transportation, Inslee said. This package will move us away from the transportation system your grandparents imagined and towards the transportation your grandchildren dream of. Well, given the fact that we don't abort them, of course. Also included in the transportation package is funding for 4 new hybrid electric ferries, thousands of electric vehicle charging stations, 25 transit electrification projects across the state, as well as free fares for riders 18 and younger on public transportation systems, according to a Medium post the governor wrote on Friday. So as we look at this, and as I always do, my question is always, why do you ban a certain kind of vehicle? Why do you say you shall not buy when you can instead make it easier to buy the vehicle that you want people to buy? Give them the option, but make sure that if they want to go out and buy the electric car, because electric cars are cool, that if they want to go out and buy it, that they've got the infrastructure in place, that they've got the roads and the charging stations. Or that private industry can come in and fill the gap that you guys have left behind because the government sucks at fucking everything. I don't know. All I know is that they're trying to force a step ahead and a fix to a problem. And hey, you know, if you can't afford the gas prices, just go out and buy that $50,000 electric vehicle. From News Channel 8, Florida lawmaker wants to ban transgender drugs, surgery for minors. What is this? What do we listen to here? I wonder. Holy shit, it's 9 already.
Look at the data, and scientists, this is one of the most startling aspects of the pandemic for me, in terms of what some of my colleagues are saying and doing. It is, I mean, you know, you don't need to go to medical school to look at the data and see that there's really great protection, you know, terrific protection, durable protection, robust protection, sort of variant protection that confers some resistance to variants.
Okay, that's Pinko-Pox stuff. All right, from Tampa, a Florida lawmaker wants to ban giving drugs to or performing surgery on minors for gender assignment. Florida Rep. Randy Fine of Brevard County tweeted on Monday that he will introduce legislation in the next session to make it a crime of felony child abuse to provide those services to minors, punishable by prison time and loss of medical license. We should not have children making decisions they cannot undo, said Fine. Now, my bill would not say that if you're a boy and you think that you're a girl, that you can't have people call you a girl or dress like a girl or go to mental counseling and talk about it. It simply says you have to wait until you're an adult. Fine specifically singled out a plastic surgery doctor in Miami who, he said, advertises her gender confirmation services on TikTok. I don't think if you're trying to market your services to an adult, Fine said before shifting gears. I don't know about you, I don't use TikTok, but my 14-year-old does. Andy Lent, a transgender health advocate for Equality Florida, said, Rep, these procedures aren't assigning a gender. That's not even what it is, Lent said. It's gender affirmation because people already know what gender they identify with. Lent said these decisions should be left up to a doctor, the patient, and their family. He also pointed that many transgender youth don't use hormonal surgery during their transition. Not everyone's journey or transition process is the same, Lent said. Everyone's care looks different. That's true of non-transgender people. Why all of a sudden are we not trusting doctors? Well, I don't know about you, but around here, that's not all of a sudden. That's a long time thing. Sam Sharp is a student at Hillsborough Community College, majoring in psychology and gender studies. At 18, she began transitioning. Now 21, Sam says she's much happier and finally feels like herself. I'm very happy. I'm accomplishing things I would have never thought possible in my past. I wouldn't be alive today if I wasn't allowed to transition, Sharp said. When Sam first heard about the proposal from State Rep. Randy Fine, she was shocked and disappointed and had a message for the state leader from Brevard County. I would tell him to speak to a trans person for once, I feel like. That's all he has to do. I feel like all he has to do is see how incorrect he is, Sharp said. Well, no, he's absolutely correct. And this is the thing with this. The government's only real interest in what goes on in your biology is the next generation, obviously. Whether you have or don't have children based on the infrastructure that they have in place. But as far as parental rights, now, if the parent says this is the way to do this, that parent is, I would say, severely fucked up. But the parent is giving out the permission to do the surgery. I don't tell other people how to parent their kids. I tell them how fucked up it is, how they choose to parent their kids, but ultimately the decision comes down to the parent and the kid. Now, with that being said, it's important to look at this. And my friend Linda, who used to run an AOC parody account, has a transgendered kid who is a minor, who has not had any sort of surgery whatsoever. I don't know which direction the kid went, so I'm not going to use a pronoun off of that. But the kid, she even said, because she came on the Red Net show in the midst of one of these big battles coming off this, and even said herself that she respects the transgender movement, but if some doctor out there comes out and tries to perform a surgery behind her back on her kid without her permission, that doctor is probably going to die. Once you have achieved the age of 18 in this country, you can go do whatever stupid surgery that you want to do to yourself. If it makes you feel like you're more complete as a person, whether it be a piercing, whether it be a tattoo, or whether it be having your fucking cock chopped off. But to come back out here and try to convince these innocent kids who just think they're doing the best and have not achieved, by the legal definition, the ability to make the decision for themselves, to go back out behind the back and get the surgery, no. As long as this stays for minors, I don't have a problem with this bill. What you do as an adult is your own goddamn business. As long as you can afford the medical care to do so, what you do as an adult is your own goddamn business. But for God's sakes, leave the fucking kids out of it. All right, we did the positives for COVID. What else do we have? There are a couple others that I want to do about this here today before we head out of here for the day. Before we do thing I like and thing that I hate, which I've got a good one for each of those here today. Let's grab this one from Thomas Massey, because this is a short one. Thomas Massey tweets out yesterday, "We're debating domestic terrorism bill in Judiciary Committee. Due to a troubling DHS bulletin, Representative Andy Biggs of Arizona offered an amendment to prevent the targeting of Americans due to their views on the pinko pox vax. Every Dem voted against this amendment." And he does provide the full text of this as well, which I will put in the chat for you, and I'll put in the Discord as well. But, I mean, there are people in this thread, and I read down through this thread. Of course, the view that people who want to be left alone as unhinged terrorists. Oh, I'm sorry, of course they view people who want to be left alone as unhinged terrorists. It's been almost 2 days since Massey reminded us that he majored in mechanical engineering at MIT. And there are actually people down in this thread that are saying to this of, oh, well, yes, that's because the people who are anti-vax are actually domestic terrorists. I wish I could find one of those comments, because otherwise it's just me talking out of my ass. But of course, I keep hitting show more replies, show more replies. And there's one. The more anti-vaxxers we have, the less anti-vaxxers we have. The party of choice, trademark. They won't be happy until they control all their subjects. And there's one. Good. Oh, they want to label. They still want to label anti-vaxxers as domestic terrorists. Good. Or, so don't pass the domestic terrorism bill. Domestic terrorism isn't even a problem, which is a fair point. It isn't. But that's what we see off of that. Alright, what else do we have? Here's a little bit of a feel-good one for you. That everybody will be happy about except for Ron Helton. Governor Youngkin donating first quarter salary to Virginia Law Enforcement Assistance Program. Which I think is kind of cool that we've got people out there that don't want to take a salary from the government and come back out and enjoy this. But, you know, Youngkin's coming out and funding the cops with it. Governor Glenn Youngkin announced today that he will donate his salary for the first few months in office to the Virginia Law Enforcement Assistance Program, an organization helping police officers and first responders who have dealt with critical traumatic incidents while on duty in their personal lives. The governor, who had originally pledged to donate $43,750 during his 2021 campaign, made the announcement while speaking to the organization's post-critical incident seminar in Harrisonburg. I pledge to serve our Commonwealth without accepting a salary because I want to continue giving back to the Commonwealth and helping Virginians in every way I can, said Youngkin. This reaffirms my ongoing commitment to support our men and women in law enforcement with mental health resources, training, and equipment to ensure that we are serving those that protect our communities across the Commonwealth. So, good. I mean, again, we have so many people that are coming into the government just to get rich. I'm looking at you, Pelosi. And then we have somebody who's actually getting the salary that he's allotted in his position and saying, you know what, I don't want it. Let's see, what else? The Hunter stuff. Let's do this one, and I think we're going to be done. So this one is just plain stupid. This shouldn't need to be fact-checked, and maybe it's just coming from a different point of view for me because I actually know this school district and know that this isn't a problem in this school district because I used to live very close to this district. I'm very familiar with the city of Waunakee. And this is not a big deal. But this is your AP fact check of the day. Wisconsin School District does not have a furry protocol. From Allie Swenson. The Waunakee Community School District, a suburb of Madison, has a furry protocol that allows students who identify as furries to opt out of speaking in class, sit and lick their paws during gym class, and bark and growl in the hallways. That's the claim. AP's assessment. False. This district does not have a protocol for students who identifies animals and does not allow disruptions at school, according to Superintendent Randy Gutenberg. The facts. A baseless rumor that students who dress up as animals are getting special treatment in the Wisconsin School District is circulating widely online this week after a conservative radio host said that she'd received an email about the issue last month. Vicky McKenna, who I listen to occasionally, I didn't hear this particular episode of course, who hosts a show on Madison AM radio station, said on a March 17th podcast that she received an email from a grandparent of students in the Waunakee Community School District saying the students were being told to normalize the behavior of classmates who prefer to dress and act like animals. The furries can choose whether they want to speak in class or not, read part of the purported email shared on screen in a video version of the podcast hosted by the University of Wisconsin Oshkosh professor. The furries are allowed to dress in their choice of furry costumes. The furries can choose not to run in gym class, but instead sit at the feet of their teacher and lick their paws. Barking, hissing, and similar animal noises are commonplace in the hallways at the schools. I've been to Waunakee, and I guarantee you that's not a problem in Waunakee, because the farm kids would go beat the crap out of these kids. The claim is completely false, according to Gutenberg, who clarified in an email to the Associated Press that the Waunakee Community School District does not have a protocol for furries, nor do we allow disruptions in our schools and our classrooms. McKenna did not immediately respond to an emailed request for comment. If they just said that this was happening in Milwaukee, if they just said, or Vicky would have said this was happening in Madison, maybe in Eau Claire, maybe in Green Bay, I would have bought it. I would have said, okay, well, this is a problem. Let's go look into this. Is this actually true? But because it was Waunakee, no, there's no fucking way. I knew this was bullshit as soon as I saw this. Social media comments claiming students who identify as animals are being allowed to use the restrooms incorrectly in Wisconsin's Denmark School District, Green Bay Area Public School District, and Pulaski School District are unfounded, administrators of those districts told the Associated Press. The bogus claim comes as lawmakers and political candidates have shared similar misinformation about student furries in Michigan, Nebraska, and other Wisconsin districts amid the culture wars and legislative action involving gender identification in schools. Yeah, and this is basically, it's a way to go back and gin up more outrage because of the gender affirmation stuff, which, again, honestly, if you're going to be a boy and identify as a girl and go in the bathroom with my daughter, even though I don't have a daughter, but if you're going to do that with my daughter, well, let's just say you guys are not going to see me behind this microphone ever again. Because I will be in prison forever. But yeah, as soon as I found out this was Wanaki, I knew this was bullshit. And with that, I think we're going to head out of here for the day. But before we do, we're going to finish out the day, as usual, on a Thursday with a thing that I like and a thing that I hate. So, thing that I like today, I talk about political stuff that I watch, and you guys know some of the few political commentators that I watch, but every once in a while I come back and I talk to you guys about, what I watch on Netflix, what I watch on Paramount Plus, what I watch on Disney Plus every once in a while, even though I think that one's going to be going out the window too in the very near future. The Mandalorian, we talked about that. We've talked about the Star Wars stuff. You guys kind of get an idea of what I watch here. So I decided to go in and let you guys in on what I watch on YouTube when I'm not doing political stuff, which is all the time because, fuck, I sit here for 2 hours a day and talk to you about politics. I want a break as soon as I'm out of here. So, and I mean, I'm not wearing it today, but everyone knows that I'm a video game fan. Everybody knows that I'm a Fallout fan. And sometimes I like to look into the lore of stuff here. And one of the best places that I found to go find the lore of Fallout is the Oxhorn channel on YouTube. And of course, again, I'm not going to send you guys out to the political stuff that I watch because I want you to get your politics from me, not the political stuff that I watch, obviously. Because if you're coming here, you're watching the Twitch commercials and you're paying me. Or you're coming in and making a donation, you're paying me. I want you to get your politics stuff from here, but as far as like the other stuff, the entertainment stuff, I don't mind sending people out to this, and this is probably one of my favorite. Now, Oxhorn, he's got a way better voice than I do. I'll say that right off the bat. I mean, Oxhorn's voice is enjoyable to listen to. He's slow, he's methodical, and he's gone, especially with Fallout 2, he's gone through every Fallout game and gone to every NPC that you can interact with, gone through every piece of their dialogue tree, including stuff that he doesn't have in the playthroughs he's had, that he doesn't have the stats checks to go back through and do. He goes back and does it off the screen and goes through the stat check stuff and goes through all of the lore of the Fallout games. And last night I started listening to the Honest Hearts series that he did. Now, I'm way back up in the playlist for this here, but I just wanted to sit down and look at some of the loot that came out of the Honest Hearts and just let's listen to Oxhorn and what he has to say and how detailed he is about this kind of stuff. And again, if you're a fan of when we sat down and did the Fallout game for an entire year last year, if you're a fan of that kind of stuff and you want to see more of the lore, this is the guy to watch. Because he's incredibly detailed. He's done a lot of research into this, and, well, he's got the join, the Patreon, and everything else to show for it. But he also likes the Metro system in Fallout 3. He also likes scotch, and he also likes cigars. So I've questioned myself before and said, hey, am I Oxhorn and don't know it? Like, do I pass out at some point and wake up as Oxhorn and do this kind of stuff? Because he likes all the same kind of stuff I do. I don't think I'm Oxhorn, but I've never seen myself and Oxhorn in the same room at the same time either. So let's listen to a little bit of the loot of Honest Hearts.
We did it! Ladies and gentlemen, we got through the entire Honest Hearts DLC, finished all of the story, and now we can reward ourselves with the loot. That's right, this episode is about every awesome piece of loot that we can walk away with after completing Honest Hearts. Let's start with weapons. The major new addition to New Vegas, thanks to Honest Hearts, is the .44 caliber auto pistol. This is a beautiful little pistol used by Joshua Graham and his dead horses. You'll have to forgive my character here. I have a mod installed that changes idle animations, and it appears to be conflicting with this weapon, which is why she's not actually holding it by the grip. Anyway, Joshua Graham tells us that he and his tribe used the .45 caliber auto pistol because it was invented by one of his ancestors.
This type of .45 automatic pistol was designed by one of my tribe almost 400 years ago. Learning its use is a new Canaanite rite of passage.
He is referring to John Browning, a Mormon who lived in Ogden, Utah, which is where we find New Canaan in the Fallout universe, who became famous as a firearms designer. He designed many weapons that were revolutionary for their day, including the M1917 and M1919 30 caliber air-cooled machine guns, the M250 caliber machine gun, the Browning automatic rifle, and the Browning Auto 5 semi-automatic shotgun. But probably his most famous invention was the M1911 pistol. At the time, it was a revolutionary design, and it has since been imitated by pistol manufacturers around the world, which is why it's such a conventional design. What was revolutionary in his day is very commonplace in ours. The M1911 was first produced in 1911, making it a very old design. And like in New Vegas, the real-world version uses a .45 caliber automatic Colt pistol cartridge. The pistol has iron sights, making it easy to aim, and there are 2 mods available for this weapon. The .45 Auto Pistol Heavy Duty Slide, which increases the weapon's condition, and the .45 Auto Pistol Silencer, which silences the weapon. We can buy these modifications from Joshua Graham himself, or after we've completed the DLC, after Joshua Graham leaves, we can buy them from Vendortron. Presumably the Happy Trails Expedition is now able to exchange goods with the new Canaanites, making these weapons and mods available in the Mojave Wasteland. And this is true for all of the mods in this DLC. Adding these mods to the weapon changes the look of the gun.
I mean, that right there, just on one in-game piece, is an incredible amount of research. And I mean, props on the people, the developers of New Vegas itself, for putting that kind of the detail into this on top of it. But the fact that Oxford not only tells you about the .45 auto that you use in game, but the actual real-world history behind it, the Browning Company, the fact that he was Mormon, which Graham himself is also Mormon in the game, and all the detail that went to this, the history of the 1911. I mean, this, if you want the detail, down to the finest point of detail, this is the channel for you. Definitely. I enjoy it. I enjoy sitting and listening to it. And you don't even have to, like, Oxhorn shows the video of this and shows his character's hand clipping because of the mod that he installed. But even if you just have this going for half an hour in the background at work, you can still listen. You can still get the full amount of information back out of it. You don't get to see the animations, obviously, but this works just as well as an audio background noise as it does for a sit down and watch half-hour video. So, highly recommended. Oxhorn. He's verified on YouTube too, so OXHORN. Go check him out if this is your bag. Definitely go and check that out. Very, very enjoyable. All right, and now for a thing that I hate. We talked about it yesterday, and we got to throw an F in the chat. The Capitol Hill fox has been euthanized. They killed the Capitol Hill fox, ladies and gentlemen. He came out. He lived. He wanted to see the big city and the bright lights. And he lost his life for his troubles. F's in the chat for the Capital City fox. This comes to us from Fox News. From Michael Ruiz. The tale of the wild Capitol fox that bit a congressman, a reporter, and at least 7 other people in Washington Tuesday came to an end after the city health officials put it down and later confirmed it had been infected with the rabies virus. Health officials in Washington, D.C. said the fox was captured Tuesday after reports of aggressive encounters around Capitol Hill was an adult female. They captured its kits earlier this morning and are still looking into what to do with them. Oh no, they have the babies. The DC police has the babies. You might as well give them to the ATF for target practice. The fox responsible for 9 confirmed bites on Capitol Hill yesterday was captured and humanely euthanized, so the rabies testing may be done, a spokesperson for DC Health told Fox News Digital Wednesday. Just like the ATF. Killing a small canine without the facts, just like the ATF. The results came in positive later in the day. Authorities said they were reaching out to the 9 victims and were asking anyone else who came into contact with the vixen or its kits to call DC Health at 202-442-9143. The animal's antics kicked off a mild sensation Tuesday and even spawned a satirical Twitter account which tweeted, "Gone but not forgotten," shortly after officials confirmed they euthanized the vixen. Authorities say they uncovered no additional foxes on the Capitol grounds, but said that more could be spread out around the city. Anyone who spots an animal that appears aggressive, sick, or injured is asked to call Animal Control at 202-723-5730. DC Health will not be doing a roundup of healthy foxes in the area and only intervenes to remove wildlife if they are sick or injured or where an exposure to humans has occurred and rabies testing would be warranted, the spokesperson said. DC Health encourages anyone who's come into physical contact with a fox to call DC Health at 202-442-9143. Don't euthanize the kits. Don't euthanize the kits. I would want one as a pet. I would, of course, want some sort of confirmation that it wasn't rabbit, but I would raise a fox as a pet. I think they're cool. It's like a little dog. Of course, again, I would have to get it as a kit because if you take it back from the wild, you're likely to get your ass mauled by it, bitten, or some sort of other crazy shit. But something that you're raising as a little baby that's grown up around humans, that knows around humans, domesticate it. I think that would be kind of a cool little pet. What does the fox say? Last night I found out this was Ami Berra. What does the fox say? Last night I found out, he tweeted after telling reporters about the encounter. Joking aside, animal bites are extremely serious. In the case of an encounter, please speak with a physician immediately. He said he was okay, but shared a link with information on rabies. So, it is sad that she had to die. And that, of course, it's also sad that she had rabies and probably would have had to die anyway. But to have so much fame, to even have a Twitter account named after her, and then have to go and suffer death at the hands of the federal government. There are a little over 506 sick critters on the hill, just saying, says Ron Hilton. I knew that was going to come at some point here. Alright, so with that, we're done. We're out of here for the day. Well, that was fun. That was actually quite a fun show. We got quite a bit more done than I thought we were going to. Basically, we've just got to go back and look at the Hunter laptop stuff for tomorrow. So let's throw some outro music up and let's head out of here for the day. So, thanks everybody who came by and chatted with us in the live chat. Come by and hung out. I saw a couple names that I haven't seen for a while. So, all those names are going to get read tomorrow. So, make sure you guys tune in tomorrow. Tell a bunch of friends. Let's crank up and see what we can get out of the live chat tomorrow, too. Because, you know, it's more fun when we do it on a Friday and get a lot of chat up in there. But, yep, we've got the names so far of everybody from the week in the notebook. So, come back in tomorrow. Make sure that your name is in the notebook so I can come back and say thank you for chatting. Thank you for participating, and thank you for making this show what it is. Come back and join us for that. As far as the weekend goes, I think I am going to do some Marathon Fallout 4 on Saturday. That's possible. But starting on Sunday, I am sitting in this chair right here and not leaving because I'm off for next week, and I am going to sit down and do all of the real estate courses that I bought over a year ago. So you're probably not going to hear from me as much on Twitter or on the Discord as you guys usually have been. So definitely watch for that. Definitely see what's happening with that. Otherwise, come back here tomorrow. Join us for more contemporary, more news headlines, and the live chat tomorrow. Looking forward to seeing some of you guys. Looking forward to seeing some of the stuff that you guys have to say about what happened both today, because that's what we'll be reviewing tomorrow, is what happened today and throughout the week as well. And we will see you then. And until then, I am Jay Edgar, and this is Contemporary. Take care.